Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce you now. Ken Sykes was born in the state of Alaska. He lived there through high school and was raised to have an appreciation of the outdoors and natural environments. He moved to Salt Lake City, Utah to attend the University of Utah, go Utes, then studied mechanical engineering. While attending the University of Utah, he met his wife, Ginger, who is still putting up with him 25 years later. He currently has two sons who are 8 and 10 years old. In 2015, an injury forced Ken to reevaluate his lifestyle and started him on a journey to fitness and self-discovery. Along the way, he found Spartan Races and used them as a lens to help focus his mental and physical development. To date, Ken has completed 45 Spartan races, which include 2 top 10 finishes in his age group and 2 Spartan Ultra races, where each measured more than 30 miles long with over 60 obstacles. You can find Ken on Facebook at ken.sykes. Ken Sykes, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Such an honor. We've been talking about doing this for a very long time. You have such a cool story into health and fitness that I think is very inspirational. I think it can help a lot of people who maybe found themselves in your spot several years ago when, didn't really have the same level of health and fitness that you have currently.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to be able to get on here with you. It's been a while in the making. I'm glad to be able to get all the stars to align and be able to get on here together.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into your story, I'm going to ask a question I've never asked on the podcast. It's one of my favorite questions to ask people. Totally random. What was the first piece of music you ever bought, and what format was it in?
Okay, so it was a cassette tape, and I'm trying to remember which one was the first one. I think it might have been a Weird Al Yankovic album.
Hilarious.
I think, yeah. I don't remember which album it was though. Yeah,
That's hilarious.
It was like back in the early 80s. I remember I bought it at a grocery store too. It's when you could get music at the grocery store.
That's great. Oh, that's awesome. Mine was Ace of Base that I bought on cassette tape also. CDs were like new and fancy and way too expensive for me back in the day. So cassette tapes for the win.
Yeah, I remember like buying a cassette tape was a real step up, because before that you'd get a blank tape and you would call up the radio and you would request a song and you'd sit in front of the radio for like the next 20 minutes waiting for them to play your song, and you'd hurry and hit the record button so you could make your own mixtape that way.
Dude, I totally did that. You had to be like Johnny on the spot on that record button to like not get it like 20 seconds in or whatever.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're like there, like just staring at the radio dial.
That's amazing. Yeah, we really had it rough back then. Speaking of having it rough, you grew up in Alaska, which I think is super fascinating. Tell us what that was like.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I mean, for me, it was just kind of how things work, obviously being born there. So I was born in Fairbanks, and then my family moved to Anchorage about a year later. So growing up there, just kind of some of the things that I kind of took for granted that other people might find unique is like the daylight schedule. So in the summertime, the sun comes up at like 4 a.m. and it doesn't set till like 10 or 11 at night around the summer solstice. And so like in high school, I'd have a job working at a warehouse. I'd get off work at 9 p.m. and then go hiking for 2 hours and still have plenty of daylight.
Wow.
But then in the winter, it was the opposite. So the sun comes up at like 11 a.m. and then sets at 4. So like in high school, I'd get up, I'd go to high school in the dark, 6:30, 7 a.m. And then I'd stay after for like wrestling practice and come home in the dark. So it's just kind of an interesting dichotomy there. I remember there's like moose that would roam around our neighborhood. So they were kind of very prolific around there. A lot of natural moose and other wildlife, even though I lived in Anchorage, which is, it's a metropolitan area of about 250,000 people.
Interesting. So I've always wondered about the daylight thing. What do most locals do up there? Do they tend to sleep a lot more in the winter and a lot less in the summertime? Do they kind of flow with the rhythm of the sun, or is it still kind of more of a fixed schedule?
So I know for us, we had like these super thick vinyl blinds you pull down to try to block out the light, to actually try to make the room dark at nighttime. To be honest, that was really before I was really, interested in circadian rhythms and, tracking sleep schedules and stuff. I wasn't quite along that path yet. But, so as growing up as a teenager, you just try to stay up as late as you can, right?
Exactly. Good call. Then what was it like moving from Alaska to Utah?
So actually it was a fairly easy transition. Coming to Utah, part of the reason for that was I had extended family here. My mom grew up in Murray. So I have my grandparents, aunts, and uncles here in Utah. And then Utah actually has like a really diverse ecosystem with a lot of natural a lot of natural environments you can take advantage of. So you can go hiking and skiing, and Salt Lake compared to Anchorage is really similar too. You have a large mountain range on the east side of the city and then a large body of water on the west side. Here it's the Great Salt Lake. In Anchorage, it was the Cook Inlet. And, and there's like bike paths, you can do mountain biking, trail running, all that kind of stuff is available.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It sounds like you were very active growing up and through early adulthood. When you started with school, did that wane at all? Did you stop did you stop becoming more active the way that you were?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like a lot of things in life, it would ebb and flow. And in high school, I did wrestling. It was kind of my main sport. Did a couple seasons of football, but didn't quite take to that as well. And then coming to college, I think at least the first few years, I lived in the dorms, didn't really have my own car, so I was kind of still a fairly active lifestyle there. Just kind of getting around, trying to be involved in things. You have to, locomote yourself to the different venues you're trying to get to. So it's either a mountain bike or walking or public transportation. So but I didn't really participate in any organized physical activities after high school. I just I kind of maybe a couple games, pickup games of ultimate frisbee or doing some hacky sack under a street light, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, gotcha. So as you were starting your family, having kids, you and Ginger, we mentioned in 2015 that you went through an injury. Tell us about your physical state at that point.
Sure, yeah. So in 2015, kind of new to fatherhood, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so it was kind of late springtime. It was time to get the sprinkler system up and running. So I had my 1-year-old with me, kind of being daddy's little helper. So I was carrying him on my hip with me as I was walking across the backyard. And there's kind of a sloped section with some gravel. And I just lost my footing and my foot skidded out from under me. And the process of stopping myself strained the tendon on the outside of my ankle. And it took 3 months to heal. So I spent the whole summer in an ankle brace. In the meantime, we're trying to like facilitate activities for the kids. I remember we did a backyard camp out party with a bunch of our friends. So I'm hobbling around this ankle brace, trying to help people set up tents in my backyard. And this whole time I'm thinking how retarded this is. And then just the limiting factors that my physical condition had on what I wanted to do, at least mentally, right? The two didn't coincide. And so then and now also I have the 1-year-old and the 3-year-old, and they're both boys. So I'm kind of projecting this forward, thinking about the kind of the active lifestyle I had growing up, fishing and camping, and then doing sports and other things like that. And I'm thinking, how am I going to be able to be engaged in their lives and be an example to them of the kind of lifestyle you want to live? So that forced me to actually kind of go to a local gym and just sign up on a whim. I think it was early November by the time I kind of wrapped my head around all this, after I got recovered enough that I felt like I could go back to a gym. And then my kids were going to a Montessori school at the time because both my wife and I work. And right across the street was this gym. I did zero research on it, which for me, being an engineer, I'm very much about research and looking into things. So this is very unusual for me. So I walked into this gym, I talked to the guy and pretty much like, okay, sign me up. So then I go home. I didn't even tell my wife I was doing this. I come home, I'm like, hey, we're signed up for a gym, right? And she's like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. Yeah. So and we'd had gym memberships in the past and used them, on and off. And my wife and I actually kind of we met up at the U, and one of the things we did to kind of help form a common bond between us was we went to the gym up there. I was taking like a weightlifting class at the time. So I kind of, like no real stranger to fitness, just didn't really have like a good consistency with it.
Yeah, I see. But you did have some experience with strength training. I'm curious, as you look back, what was your diet like in those days? Did you follow any particular way of eating back then?
No, I mean, I would actually literally admit to people that I ate like garbage. I mean, I was very much about kind of just maximizing flavor, whatever was the easiest. So fast food was quite often on the menu, just trying to, get something so I wasn't hungry that tasted good. I would tend to lean towards more meat-based dishes, just my own natural dietary tendencies. So I remember one time we were at a work sponsored lunch, and we were kind of joking around, and one of my colleagues made the comment that he was kind of a social carnivore. because he would only eat meat when we went to these group outings. A lot of times he had a more plant-based diet. And then he looked at me and he says, and I think Ken has a more aggressive carnivore diet style. So.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, this is kind of where our paths cross. And I can't remember how long you had been a member at that gym that I was also at. And we know now, looking back on this area of the valley, of the Salt Lake Valley, like if you've never been here, you don't understand what it's like, especially in this particular gym. Like, this is the gym that you get gussied up for. You don't just like walk in with workout clothes and do your workout and leave. And like, this is the place where I saw people doing their makeup in the parking lot before entering the gym. And it's very much a part of that kind of culture. And it can be very intimidating for a lot of people. I'm just curious to know, what was your experience like as you started to attend to the gym? Was there a level of, what am I doing here? Intimidation? What are people going to think of me? Did you experience any of that?
Not consciously, I guess. I mean, I realized that I wasn't like your typical gym rat, but that may also kind of lend back towards growing up in Alaska, and I've always kind of led a lifestyle where I wasn't part of the mainstream culture. So, I mean, that wasn't really a huge hurdle for me. I mean, so going into the gym, I realized that I wasn't the most fit person there. I was far from it. And so, but luckily, just the things I usually try to focus on the positives of situations. So I tend to, instead of like looking at all the meatheads there that are there, trying to do their 1-rep maxes and having their little bromance with the other guys doing the workouts, I ended up kind of building a community with the people who had like similar interests. So kind of skipping forward a little bit, there was like a running group there, and there was a couple of the people in the running group that were also kind of, similar, along how far they are on down their path of their fitness journey. And so kind of building that network and getting that, it's almost kind of like Cheers, the old show you had where you a place where you can go where everybody knows your name. So having a few key members, they just walk in and say hi. And plus, getting to know the staff there, people like you, and there was several others that were so open and friendly, it really helped out. I think it helped kind of lower that hurdle for me.
That's great. No, I think that's really good advice for people that are listening and maybe thinking about, joining a gym or getting fit. It can be very difficult in the beginning, but I think that's a really good way to look at things, understanding that people don't really necessarily, watch you or judge you or anything, and trying to find the social circles where you fit in. You'll find a lot of like-minded people. I will say, during the pandemic, I did watch several episodes of Cheers. They still hold up, dude. I don't know if you have gone back and watched any of those. It's almost like Seinfeld. Like, they're still really good.
Yeah, I know Seinfeld's still good. I haven't watched any episodes of Cheers recently. Maybe I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, they hold up. They're still good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. So, okay, so at the time, we kind of talked about, you rehabbing your injury. What are your major goals at that time? Like, did you have weight to lose? Did you have fat to lose? What were you going to the gym to achieve?
So when I first signed up, I never did any actual metrics of my body, just kind of estimating. I was probably, pushing 250, 260 pounds. I'm at 6 feet tall. I mean, I was probably, easily 40% body fat. So I mean, I was a pretty kind of close to getting roly poly, right? I wouldn't say I was obese, but and I've always been, pretty had a pretty broad stature too, kind of broad through the shoulders. So I definitely wasn't a little guy. So my initial goal was just to kind of be more fit, right? It was kind of an abstract goal. And so that started, I was leveraging off my past experience. I'd done a little bit of running in the past. I knew cardio was good, right? And then I'd done some weightlifting classes. So I kind of knew, I had an idea, kind of how to set up, my 3 sets of 10 for hypertrophy, and trying to do a progressive overloading, try to build up the strength there. So I was kind of doing my own thing and winging it. And that's when I came across when you sign up for the gym, one of the things they give you is a free fitness evaluation with one of the personal trainers, right? And so they came up to me, and I don't really like salespeople, so they're like, "Hey, we got a free fitness evaluation with you. We're gonna set you up with this guy. You want to do that?" I'm like, "Well, it's free. I might as well do it." So I'm expecting the hard sell on this. And so I show up to this session. It's like, like a 30-minute long session. And it's a lot of kind of like core strengths and range of motion type evaluations. They're having you step over a pipe and seeing how straight can you hold your arm as you, like, with your back against a wall, and go through a range of motion without compromising your joint position, right? And so this guy, he's very matter of fact. I mean, first time I've met him, And so I expecting like this hard sell, this big dollar sign attached to this. How are we going to get you signed up today? Tell me what we got to do. And he ends the session by saying, well, you get like a 3 out of 12. And if you don't want to suck, come talk to me. And just walks away. And I'm like, I'm just left flabbergasted. I'm like, 3 out of 12, that's not very good. And I hate sucking. Oh my gosh. So he totally reeled me in with that. And so then I follow back up with them, and I end up getting him to write fitness programs for me. All right. And this guy, he has a master's degree in sports science. He has a background being a collegiate trainer. Right. And so I kind of just, at our 2 points in our lives, this is kind of where we end up crossing paths. And so then he writes these programs. I start going through them, right? And they're fun. It's a lot of functional fitness, interval style training, and not really your usual just go, do 3 sets of 10 curls. So it's a lot more mentally engaging too. That really helped me out. It gave a challenge, right? I don't have to come up with my own routine. It's already laid out for me. I just have to show up and do the work. So I get a couple months into this, and he's I keep checking in with him every few weeks. And he says, okay, well, you're working really hard. I can see you're putting in the work, but if you eat like garbage, you're going to look like garbage, right? And as through this process, I'm kind of trying to dial in what my goals are, right? Like, I want to increase strength. I want to lose body fat. Those are kind of my 2 things right now at this point, right? And so towards losing body fat, he's like, if you eat like garbage, you're going to look like garbage. If you don't want to suck, go talk to this other guy, the nutritionist. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll go do a consultation with the nutritionist. And I'm kind of a little bit apprehensive at this point because I don't want to like onboard too much all at once and overwhelm myself and set myself up for failure. So I go have this conversation, and there's another just super smart, super talented guy that's on the staff here at the gym. And we sit down and he lays out a whole kind of plan for me and kind of breaks down and says, these are the kind of areas where you're lacking. These are the areas we need to build up. And these are the areas we need to cut back on. Right. And it's kind of a lot of common sense type stuff, monitor your fats, your carbs, and your protein intake. Right. And he's giving me general guidelines like, okay, eat a piece of meat the size of your palm, eat, a source of fat the size of this many fingers and this many fingers worth of carbs. Right. So just kind of that way you can kind of eyeball a dish. You're not doing a lot of like mental gymnastics for it. So I start doing that and I start seeing results. Right. And so then I kind of start getting into now my engineering side of my brain's kicking in. I'm like, okay, what does this look like if we take it to the next level? It's like, well, you can start actually tracking like grams of your macros, carbs, proteins, and fat. So I get to the point, fast forward a couple of years, I get to the point where I actually have like a scale, and every time I have a meal, like I'll say I'm making a lunch to take to work, I'd actually on Sunday night, I'd make like 6 of these meal prep containers. I would take like the chicken breasts and the black beans and the green beans or whatever, broccoli, whatever my food sources are, and I'd weigh them out. I'd put them in these pre-prepared containers. And then I would write the macros on a Post-it note so I'd know which values to enter into my tracking app that day, right? And so through this macro tracking program I was on, it was helping providing me a framework, and it was an easy way to evaluate kind of food sources, right? Because remember, one of the aha moments I had was like I was hungry, right? And we were like out running around doing family stuff, so we stopped at Arby's and ate an Arby's sandwich. Right. But then I like ate that and I was like hungry like an hour later. And so then I go to log it into my app, and the Arby's sandwich has something stupid like 700 calories just for the sandwich. I didn't even eat any fries. Right. And so then I'm thinking like, well, I can have a 700 calorie sandwich. It leaves me hungry, or I can eat like a grilled chicken breast and a whole plate of vegetables for like 400 calories. Right. And so it helped me kind of start putting my head around like food sources and where the nutrients are coming from. Right. And so then that started leading me towards this direction of trying to get less processed foods. And I don't know if there's kind of an adage when you go shopping at the grocery store, you want to kind of just shop around the perimeter of the store because that's where the better food sources typically are, the produce, the meat section, the dairy. And so I kind of started dialing in my food better that way. And then also helped give me a goal. It gave me a goal too to work towards of with these macro counts of kind of help recalibrate how much I was eating, because that was another thing I had to kind of overcome was using using food as an emotional source, right, to kind of help placate other issues that are going on. And over time, I end up kind of replacing that with exercise. So there was kind of a trade-off there as well.
That is so interesting. I love that you went in such detail. You mentioned, logging your food two different ways, or paying attention to food two different ways. One was more visual, using your hand and different cues and saying like, okay, I want about this much in this meal. I want about this much in this meal, and balancing out that way. You also mentioned being very, very precise in tracking your food. And personally, I hate tracking. I hate telling my clients to track because I think it's cumbersome. I think it can be inaccurate a lot of times. And, it's really can be not that helpful for certain people. But recently, somebody asked me to track my food. And so I punched in, I haven't logged into my MyFitnessPal in forever. So I punched in my stats and it downloads my account information. I track my food all day. It's a huge pain. I got to say, it was a terrible pain. But it made me aware of certain things that I wasn't aware of. And in that sense, it was very, very helpful. I've been trying to replace some of my calories that are coming from fat with more calories coming from protein. And I found out that I'm consuming a lot more protein than I would have thought. I'm at about 250 grams of protein every single day. And without tracking and being very conscious about weighing the food and tracking it correctly, I would not have known that. And so can you comment a little bit about the appropriateness of tracking food versus just like eyeballing things?
Sure, yeah. And so to kind of put that in a frame of reference, at the time at the gym, to help give myself a goal, something to work towards, because none of this is easy, like you said. It's a huge mental burden to keep track of all this stuff, to be planning ahead. And so to keep myself on the rails as like kind of to keep a goal to work towards, I'd sign up for these 60-day weight loss challenges. And so it's like a change in body percentage of fat over the 60 days, right? And then they divide that. So it's like your change in body fat divided by your initial body fat to kind of even it out. That way it's a little bit more apples to apples across different people. And so to that end, like I wanted to do well in that challenge. So that meant trying to maximize in that 60 days, kind of doing like a blitz on my diet to get to that level where I was measuring every macro to like the gram. Right. And then to that end, I was trying to hit my goals with each day within plus or minus 10%. So it was almost like more like nutritional engineering than a diet, right? Because at that level. And it was a huge burden. I did that for on and off for about a year and a half. And it almost became a habit. And on the plus side, when you use something like MyFitnessPal and you have like regular patterns to your diet, it'll keep track of what you eat and you just go and you click the things you already normally eat, right? But still, anytime if I went out to eat like at a restaurant or something, I'd have to sit there like, okay, if it wasn't like a chain restaurant that already had an entry in there, I'd have to sit there and try to figure out a way to finagle the macros out of what I ate so I could kind of keep on track with it. But exiting out of that, the end goal, and this was also with the kind of the help of the nutrition coach, was to get to more of an intuitive eating style, right? And that's kind of where I'm at now. I don't no longer track my macros, but I still keep a lot of the same trends. I know I like, this is an appropriate size portion of protein and, carbs and fat sources per the way I like to eat. And so,
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a sustainable program long-term, but the things that I got out of it was what is appropriate food, right? Because like I said, the Arby's sandwich example, 700 calories versus 400 calories for a full plate of fresh, non-processed food, and then recalibrating portion sizes. Because I think that that's something that a lot of people lose track of. It seems like if you go to a restaurant, you want to get the most value for your money. And so they just give this huge plate of food, which may not be appropriate for, what your dietary and lifestyle is currently at.
Yeah, no, there's so many good gems in there. I love that you were self-correcting. I see that a lot with people who track. Like I'm less likely to eat a Snickers bar if I know I have to track this Snickers bar. And I love that you use that as a framework to then be more intuitive down the road. And so I take this from Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights, where it's like you need to establish boundaries and borders and rules in the beginning so that then you can learn and then be able to be more flexible down the road. But you have to start by following the rules, following a template. And then once you've done that, then you can be more creative and intuitive with things.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people get hung up is they try to like get the perfect system in place before they start. And I kind of, I guess, lucked into that in both regards for both the gym and the nutrition. I was just ready to start something, right? And
Yeah.
so like I just walking into the gym and signing up, not really, I didn't even realize that was a higher level gym with, you know, a kind of a different level of clientele, like kind of like you were alluding to earlier. I just went and signed up because it was convenient, and that made a big difference because it fit into my lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
I would go pick up the kids from school, and then I'd drop them off at the gym that had a nice child care center. And then I was in there almost, you know, 5 days a week. So just
Yeah.
working it in, so it's always in there. And same thing with the food, right? If you on Sunday night, if I would plan out the meals for the whole week, I wasn't trying to make on the fly decisions like I'm hungry now, I have to figure out what to eat, because that's when you make worse choices, right? I
Yeah.
already know, like, okay, it's Wednesday afternoon, I'm eating this meal I've already prepared to, you know, a couple of days ago, and it's all good to go.
Yeah, there's no decision fatigue. It's like
Yeah.
I wear the exact same shirts Monday through Friday when I'm training my clients. I don't have to think about, well, what am I going to wear today? This is my training shirt. I wear this, and I don't think about it. I don't bother with it. That's such a great way to do things. So we talked a lot about using tools for nutrition. Tell us how you were able to leverage technology and other tools for your actual workouts. What were some of the things you learned along the way? How you could, use the technologies available to you to help you be more precise with your workouts?
Sure, yeah. So kind of like I said before, I'm an engineer, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm a closet nerd. So I definitely like to geek out on things. I had spreadsheets to track all of my weight loss, you know, with like trend lines, so I could kind of help keep on the goal. So that was one thing I used with a spreadsheet. And I found that useful because if you're weighing yourself every day, it can be kind of self-defeating, because one of the things I found, just like the amount of sodium I would take in would affect my body weight, you know, due to water intake and different things like that. So looking at the average body composition, both body fat percentage and weight over time, was a useful tool for me. And then the gym I was at had a in-body scale that would measure the percentage of body fat, and that was a better metric for me also than just weight, right? Because I was at the time when I was following this program, I was probably losing about 2 pounds of fat per week and gaining a pound of muscle early on, and then that kind of tapered off. So if I was just looking at net weight loss, that could be almost defeating. Like, I'm doing all this hard work, but my weight's not really changing much, right? I'm staying about the same weight. But losing the percentage of body fat and also the visual cues of how my body composition was changing helped kind of give that positive reinforcement that you need to kind of keep pushing through this when it's not easy, right? It's not always easy to go to the workout. It's not always easy to eat the broccoli instead of the donut, right? But kind of
Yeah.
seeing those positive feedbacks kind of would help. Like, okay, I know I lost 10 pounds, you know, last month, and everybody today is having donuts at work. I'm okay not having a donut because I want to hit that next goal of the next 10 pounds, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. We love InBody. We don't have any affiliation with them whatsoever, but investing in one of their scales to take around to our clients has been so helpful, because we noticed the same thing. Like, this happened last week. I had a client. She's been working with me for 5 or 6 weeks. It looks like she's progressing. She steps on the scale. The weight is exactly the same, and so, man, that kind of sucks. It's a little
Yeah.
frustrating. And then we do the test and find out that she has lost fat and has increased muscle, which you mentioned. A lot of people say that's not possible, which is hogwash. It absolutely is possible. You can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time without having that body composition, metric to look at. You would have no idea. You wouldn't know, and it would be very self-defeating.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I mean, it's such a grind sometimes. You know, like if you spend like the last week giving up all those those food vices that you've been dependent upon for the last 2 decades of your life, right? And you're like, well, you're wanting some sort of a reward out of that, right? What's the light at the end of the tunnel for you?
Yeah. You also had some experience with heart rate training and testing, which is, I believe, how you and I met each other. Can you tell us what you learned through doing metabolic assessments, finding out how your body was using calories, and then using heart rate monitors?
Sure. Yeah, I'm more than happy to dive into that. So I'd previously bought a Garmin workout watch, and there's other ones out there. Apple Watch does similar things now and whatnot. But my hammer of choice for that was a Garmin. And so just kind of happenstance, not happenstance, just kind of the way I'd work out. Every time before I do a workout, I would start the watch and kind of track the workout, and that way I kind of have this kind of digital journal of my workouts. And then as I'm getting into these 60-day challenges, I started like, well, if I want to do good in the challenge, I have to know how many calories I'm burning on a workout, plus my how many calories I burn every day just being alive as a human being. And so the nutritionist I was working with says, well, we do a metabolic assessment in the gym here. We can sign you up for that. And said, okay, let's go ahead and give that a shot. And that's where I met you for the first time. And so the idea there is they hook you up to a respiratory mask, and they're measuring the oxygen and carbon dioxide that goes in and out as you breathe. And then the machine can figure out from that, like how many calories you're burning and what ratio of that is fat and which ratio of that is carbs. All right. And so my goal was to burn fat for this weight loss challenge. And so I remember I show up for the appointment, and there's 3 choices for this. All right. You can either ride the bicycle, or you can get on the treadmill, and then every 2 minutes, on the test, every 2 minutes they increase the intensity level. So you get on the bicycle, and every 2 minutes they turn up the resistance level on the bike. You get on the treadmill, every 2 minutes they increase the incline. So it's almost like a power hiking type workout. Or you can get on the treadmill, and every 2 minutes they increase the speed. And that one kind of scared me, because like I'm picturing myself like after a few minutes I'm gonna be flying off the back of the treadmill as I can't keep up with the treadmill anymore. Right. So I'm like kind of defaulting towards the bike, because I'm on a seat. Like worst thing happens is I just stop pedaling when I get tired. Right. So then I asked you, like, well, what do you recommend? Right. And I kind of broke it down for you, my thought process. And I remember your words to me is, well, running is a more universal modality. I'm like, that has so many syllables to it, I have to do that one. Right. But not knowing that would project forward to that, then after that, all my cardio programming would be based on running. Right. So, and I wasn't really that big of a runner. I still have a hard time admitting to people that I'm a runner. Right? I run for my training is kind of how I internalize it. But so we get on the treadmill, and you start off at like, you do a little warm-up routine, and then you get on there, and then you start off at like a light jog, and in 2 minutes, and then you give at a 2-minute interval, you give a rating to the person doing the test of like what difficulty level is it, and then he ramps it up like a couple clicks on the treadmill and the speed, and you do that over and over again until you can't go anymore, and you call it quits. And then from that, they get there's a graph that the computer builds of what your calorie burn is across your different heart rates, like from a lower, like a resting heart rate, all the way up to like your all out running pace heart rate. And then the other really cool thing I found from it was it shows the ratio of the carbs to fat you're burning. And so at the time, because I was eating a lot of carbs, I was burning like in my cardio zone, when I should be the most efficient, I was burning 60% carbs and 40% fat. Right. And you highlighted this to me and said, well, this is something we can work on through diet and exercise. So then we started I started trying to reduce the carbs in my diet and increase the fat. And the idea there is that by taking the carbs away and adding more fat, you're teaching the body like, hey, when I need energy, I burn fat, because that's what's here. I can burn all the carbs. So that's like the high octane, fast burning, like drag fuel. And then the fat is like the slow burning, like clean, efficient fuel for the body. And so over the next like 6 months, I kind of altered the diet, and then I also did a lot more zone 2 training. So for people who aren't familiar, it's a lower heart rate. So it's almost feels like you're going too slow when you're doing the zone 2 training. I know you've had several other guests that kind of talk about that on your podcast, so I won't go too much into that. But and so doing that, I was able to flip it so that in that zone 2 area, like the optimum fat burning zone, I was burning 60% fat and 40% carbs. And then also that also helped my body too, that if I was doing like a fasted workout, that my body already said, well, I need energy. I know I can burn fat now, so I'm going to go burn fat. And if I don't have any food in my stomach, it starts burning the fat off of my body. And so I just, that whole diet and that kind of migration really like transitioned well for me. And it was all based off of that metabolic assessment that we did together.
Wow, dude, I love hearing your perspective, being somebody on the opposite end of that metabolic cart. But that was so well explained. If this whole mechanical engineering thing doesn't work out, if you want a job as a metabolic technician, I think we'll hire you on the spot.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
That was so well explained and simple to understand. And I think a lot of people, if they could just hear what you said and take some of those principles and understand that, like, yeah, you will burn more calories if you jump on a treadmill and you run really fast. You're going to be huffing and puffing. The calorie burn rate will be higher, but you will burn more of those calories from carbohydrates. And that's the direction that you will shift the metabolism, meaning you are going to be more hungry. You're going to have more cravings. You're going to, by the nature of it, consume more carbohydrates more frequently, which is going to keep your blood sugar going up and down and up and down and up and down. And once you reach the maximum storage capacity for sugar inside the body, which is very small, you're going to convert that into fat and store fat. And that is what we tell everybody to do. We tell them to work out harder, and we tell them to eat less. And that advice could not be any better for creating obesity. It's crazy. It's absolutely the worst advice that we tell people. Yet, if you slow down, if you shift the diet a little bit, it seems completely counterintuitive. Now you're burning less calories, but those calories are coming from fat. So now you're getting the results you want. You're burning fat. You're able to do fasted workouts because the body learns, I can have fat from my diet, or I've got fat here that I stored from that Arby's sandwich, and I don't want that anymore. So let's get this out of here. And people get really great results in a way that's so much easier. So I really appreciate the way that you explain that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so then I remember during one of the metabolic tests we were doing, you looked over at me and you're like, hey, have you heard about these Spartan races? I think you'd be really good at it. Because at the time I was doing a lot of zone 2 cardio, which is running based. And then I was also doing a lot of interval weightlifting workouts for my other workouts. So I was kind of splitting between the two. So it was one of those things. I got another good guidance point from you on that to kind of help nudge me in the right direction. So went from that, and we went and we signed up. I signed up for my first Spartan race, and I put it out on Facebook like, hey, I'm doing a Spartan race. Who wants to do it with me? And like, I think I like 3 likes on the post. There's like tumbleweeds rolling through my Facebook post. So I go into my wife was folding laundry in our bedroom, and I go into, I'm like, I was all pouty about it, and I'm like, no one's going to do the Spartan race with me. And so I think she was maybe feeling a little sorry for me. So she says, really? I'll do it with you. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you sure? Because you might want to look into this. Me being the engineer, I'd already researched it and knew about all the different things, right?
Of course you did.
So I sent her a bunch of YouTube links to watch for like all the obstacles and stuff. She watched 0 of them. She just showed up ready to throw down.
Ginger's awesome.
Yeah,
Ginger's the best.
Definitely a very lucky guy in that regard. So
yeah, definitely. What a great partner in crime. So for the listener who is not familiar with obstacle races, in particular the Spartan race, tell us a little bit about what they are, what they involve, and how you need to get ready for these.
Sure. Yeah. So what it is they so the Spartan race is just a type of obstacle race. It's one, there's several different brands out there. It's kind of the one that I've kind of honed in on. There's also, Tough Mudders and other ones that are kind of run regionally, terrain races and stuff like that. But the Spartan race typically consists of a running component and an obstacles. The running it's usually held in areas like ski resorts, because there's a large venue area where they can kind of host all the racers. And then the ski resort also has a mountain there, so they can have like a trail running along all the trails there. And and being in the summertime when it's not ski season, they're off season and available. So there'll be a running component of it. They do 3 different typical lengths. There's a sprint, which is like a 5K, so 3 miles. There's a super, which is a 10K, it's 6 miles. And then there's a beast, which is a half marathon distance, 13 miles. Now that's all said with a little asterisk after it, because Spartans are bad at math. So that's usually the minimum distance. The 5K usually ends up being a little closer to 4 miles. And I had one of the beasts I did was 17 miles. So
wow,
they've gotten better in recent years. But then so you start off, you're usually running along these kind of either like service roads at the ski resorts, or even some little single track paths that kind of cut between things through glades of trees and up and down hills. So there's a fair amount of elevation gain in there. And then along the way, you come to these obstacles, and there's anywhere from 20 to 30 obstacles on these courses. And the obstacles are anything from like a 4-foot plywood wall that you have to jump over, or climbing over a bale of hay, to all the way to doing like traversing across metal scaffolding on Olympic rings. So there's different varying levels of difficulty in these. Some other signature ones are there's a barbed wire crawl and a spear throw. So you have to throw a spear 25 feet into a foam target. And the way these are set up is a lot of these aren't really obtainable for everybody to do. Like my first time, my only goal was to not fall off the monkey bars, right? But the cool thing about the race is if you can't complete an obstacle, you can still do a penalty and get credit for completing the obstacle and move on to the next section of the race. Unfortunately, the penalty is typically 30 burpees,
Yeah.
which I don't know if anybody's ever tried doing 30 burpees, but it gets a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I found that that's a good reason to kind of keep up with the training, because if you know you're going to be doing this race and you don't like doing burpees, that's a good reason to practice like monkey bars and other things like that you may not be good at.
Man, so I've done one. I want to say it was 2016 at Soldier Hollow, and I didn't prepare properly for it. I was in decent shape and I finished okay. And I passed 25 of the 30 obstacles, but I failed all 5 of the ones that were anything like the monkey bars, anything that required a lot of like body weight, upper body strength. I'm really, as a cyclist and a hockey player, I'm a little bit more bottom heavy. So those didn't necessarily go that well for me. So 5 times 30, I did 150 burpees that day. And I can tell you the last, 25 burpees were probably the worst burpees anybody has ever seen. They were terrible.
Yeah, Spartan burpees are a little bit different than like your typical like strict burpees you do for like CrossFit or something else like that. I think as long as your chest hits the ground and you jump with your hands above your ears, count it. So there's a little leniency there.
Man, it was, chest definitely hit the ground. I just basically collapsed to the ground and tried to figure out a way to stand back up afterwards.
Well, that's the really cool thing about it is that I like about the Spartan races is that you have kind of 3 different areas, and nobody's really ever really good at all of them. There's very few people, but everybody can do at least one of them well, right? So there is kind of the endurance area, which is the total duration, and then the trail running aspect. There's a mobility and kind of strength to weight ratio, like the overhead stuff. So there's like monkey bars. You have to climb a rope. So things like that where you're kind of hanging, which as an adult, you may not realize if you haven't been on a playground recently, but like monkey bars are really hard as a grown-up. So, and then the other aspect to that is there's a strength aspect. So like one of the obstacles is carrying a 60-pound bucket of gravel for up a hill and back for about a quarter-mile distance. Or there's another one where you have to pick up a 100-pound concrete ball, kind of like one of those Atlas stones that they use on the strongman competitions, and you carry that down, carry it 10 yards down and back. So, if you have someone who's like really good at climbing stuff, someone who's like 100 pounds and they can do like the monkey bars all day long, but then they come up to this 100-pound concrete ball, now that's a challenge for them. So doing the races, that's what I always that's what makes a good race for me, is if there's at least one time in the race where there's a good dig deep moment where I have to kind of overcome and push myself to kind of hit that next level to overcome the obstacles.
Yeah, no, that's very well explained. I found you really had to be kind of a jack of all trades. You had to do so many different things, which for humans, that works really well. We are absolutely movement generalists. We don't do just one thing and do that one thing really well. We do lots and lots of different things. And you mentioned the monkey bars, brachiation, just hanging from something is something that humans can do that, maybe some other primates can do, but by and large, you don't see cheetahs or lions doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And we can run and sprint and jump and throw in particular, like we can swim. There's so many different things that we can do. And I love the Spartan races because there's such a wide variety of those things, more of the endurance on the one side, but also, more of the power and the speed as you're like scampering up a hill. And there's more of the strength, which you're mentioning those rocks. Like, yeah, absolutely. Very challenging in different ways. As you got started into this world, what things surprised you about doing the Spartan races? And what things did you learn about yourself?
That's some good questions. So kind of some of the things that surprised me was how the cumulative, so any of those obstacles on their own isn't super difficult. Like most people would be able to do them if you just walked up and just did the monkey bars when you're fresh, but it's like the cumulative effect, right? So like, or let's like talk about the barbed wire crawl. So you have to crawl for 20 yards under some barbed wire. So most people is to do that right out of the gate, it's not a problem. But if you've been trail running through the mountains for 6 miles, now your legs are all gassed, your hip flexors are all like totally fired up. You go to get down on your knees and you start trying to crawl under that. You've been sweating, so your electrolytes are all depleted. You start cramping up just from crawling on the ground, right? And then you have to get up and run onto the next thing. So that was probably one of the biggest surprises for me. The other one was my first race, I'd done all my cardio, either doing like road running or running on a treadmill. And the trail running aspect of it is such a different animal because you're using all the stabilizer muscles in your ankle. There's a lot of elevation gain, like in a typical 5K race, you'll have like over 1,000 feet of elevation gain. for a Spartan race. In the half marathon, so in 13 miles, there, you can get upwards of 5,000 feet of elevation gain. So that's almost like a vertical mile you're climbing across this. So just the way that also taxes the system differently. And that's another thing I kind of like about the Spartan races. And trying to load that up. As far as things I learned about myself, there's been a couple things. A lot of it's just been kind of like that, just being able to progressively push past where I'm comfortable. So getting to where I'm comfortable and maybe going like another 10% past that, in the training, and being able to kind of keep progressing myself going forward. Finding the ability to keep going even when things aren't optimal. So if I'm, there was, so one of the examples was last year, the Spartan race in Utah, on the 13-mile one, I got nauseous about mile 7 on the race, about halfway through. And anytime I got my heart rate up elevated at all, I just felt like I wanted to just lose my lunch, but I never could actually get my system to purge out. So I just spent like the next 3 hours being miserable, feeling miserable physically, but you're up there on the side of the mountain, you're halfway into this race, and you're like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to throw in the towel and just have someone haul me down the mountain on a 4-wheeler, in the medics, or am I going to push through this and finish what I started? And so that was one of those times where you have to kind of reevaluate yourself, look down inside, and decide what you're made of. And luckily I was there with my wife, and she kind of helped coach me through it, and we kept going, and we got through the race, and then was able to recover and do 2 more races the next day.
Wow, that's amazing. I see a ton of parallels between this world and the world of ultra marathon. And obviously with the 2 long ones that you did, that would be technically considered an ultra marathon, longer than 26 miles. But it just seems like in these worlds, every race, every event that you do, you come up to at least one point of I don't know if I can keep going, or a point of I had my plan, I had my A plan, my B plan, my C plan, and all of them went out the window because of other events that I could not control. Could be weather, could be feeling nauseous, like you mentioned, could be you just have bad legs. You just wake up one day and you're not fully recovered. And it forces you to decide what you're going to do. And I really love and appreciate that about these worlds, where you have to kind of get to that kind of, I don't know, I guess the border of where you think you can go and push past it to prove to yourself that you can keep going.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the interesting things about the Spartan community is the founder of Spartan Races, Jody Sina. He does a lot. He has a couple books out there, and he does some podcasts and other kind of social media presences. But they do a lot of things about overcoming adversity. And I mean, obviously, they're kind of funneling it into the Spartan race frame of reference. But that also translates over into life. I think right now in life, in the modern age we're in, there's so much easily accessed comfort. We have air-conditioned houses. We drive to where we need to go, where people are just not used to being uncomfortable. And it's just like any other muscle. If you don't flex that and get used to those acute stresses in your life, when something does come up, you're not able to wrap your head around it and figure out how to handle it and overcome it. So the fact that the fact that I've been out there trying to figure out how to run 20 miles in the mountains when I'm out of water, and I'm still 3 miles back from the car, and just trying to make sure I get back alive. And then in your daily life, you compare that to if someone cuts you off in traffic. It helps kind of recalibrate what is truly hard in life.
Yeah, I think the next time your Wi-Fi goes out for 20 minutes, you realize it's not that big of a deal. I'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so interesting. What has it meant to you to be able to do these with Ginger by your side?
Oh my gosh. So again, it was just kind of one of those things where I didn't really plan it going into it, but the fact she signed up for the first race with me, and then she stuck through it, and then we got done, and we're like, oh my gosh, that was horrible, but we could totally do that better. And we were both on the same mindset. And so we kind of went on this journey together where, then we signed up for another race because she had a work trip in Colorado and there was a race that weekend. I'm like, well, we can do that together, right? And so we've kind of continued on that path. And so what that's ended up looking like for us is, so we keep training for these so we can perform well when it's time to do the races. Our date nights become trail runs in the mountains together. right? And so we have this bonding time, and it's been really fortunate because I've seen a lot of other people, these endurance athletes, triathlons and marathoners and ultra marathoners. There's a lot of time involved in the training. And a lot of times that can drive couples apart because it's like, well, this is my me time because I need to go train for my race, and then the spouse or significant others like, well, I need my me time too. So now it's a competition. Whereas with Ginger, my wife, and I, we were able to kind of come together and make this a bonding, unifying experience as opposed to something that was like a source of conflict. And and I've also, through the course of this, I've learned that she's a lot more mentally tough than I am. So when the chips are down, she's the one that's like, okay, we're going to do this. One of my favorite examples was we were doing our first ultra Spartan race. So it's 30 miles. I think it was 8,000 feet of vertical gain, 60 obstacles. We're probably like 11 hours into this. We're at mile like 27 or something. And due to some issues with the course, they had shut down. They were shutting down part of the course. So we just done like this super gnarly hill climb, and it's like a 40% grade, hiking straight up the mountain. We hit the summit. We came back down, and there was some issue with the course. So they made a call to close down the course. So they were redirecting all the people that were behind us to not do that and come in right behind us. And Ginger saw this, and next thing I know, she just takes off running. And me physically at this point, like I can't feel my feet. They're like these painful lumps on the end of my legs. And this rocky, uneven ground. We've been going for 11 hours straight, sustained output, exertion. And next thing I know, my wife is just running down the mountain, right? And she's decided that all these people who didn't have to do that last hard hill climb, she did not want them to come in front of her at the finish line.
Wow.
Right. And so she just takes off running, and like, okay, I guess we're doing this. So I told her to take off running right behind her. And I got done with the race, and I was kind of in some rough shape, but she was in a lot better shape than I was at the end of the day. So it's been good to have her kind of be my partner in crime for sure.
That's awesome. I love that. And along with Ginger, I see that you do training with a lot of different people. You've actually, gone to the extent of like setting up a lot of these obstacles in your house, around your house, places where you can train. I can tell you specifically, like if you haven't practiced throwing that spear, like good luck. Like there's a lot of technique that goes into that. I had the wherewithal not to step on the rope that the thing's connected to, but that was about it. It was pretty pathetic. I definitely did some burpees there. But what has it also been like, not only to be able to train so specifically for these events, but also to bring so many people along with you in these groups that I see on social media training all the time? It looks amazing.
Yeah, so it's kind of been a fun thing. Like it's one of those things that you start doing it, and then my wife actually does an Instagram page called Iron Horse Athletes, where she posts a lot of this kind of family related fitness on there. And other friends see this, and they're like, "That looks kind of fun. I think I might want to try that," right? And then you kind of bring them into the fold with you, but then they don't want the race to be a hot mess when they show up, so they start asking for advice. So like you said, we kind of ended up kind of reformatting our backyard. So I built monkey bars under my deck. I hung a climbing rope off of the deck so I could practice those things. We made our own spear throw because, like you said, if you don't have a place to practice, you don't have a way to practice that, it's like a 70% failure rate. And so so I went and bought supplies from Home Depot, built a spear throw. And then we started getting friends. I think we've done these different groups 4 different years now, where we've had groups of people go with us to varying degrees. And it's such a great communal experience. I mean, there's different ways you can race. And we mentioned in the intro that I'd done some age group races where it's timed and there's referees counting things. And it's about getting that, those top ranked positions. And that's one type of race. The other way we do it is when I like with friends is it's kind of a no man left behind communal experience. And so we have these people go with us that may be, seasoned athletes, or maybe their first time ever doing a structured race of any sort. And so it's like this bonding experience where you all go through together, and it's really fun. That we did one just 2 weeks ago here in Utah, where we had 15 people from all different walks of life that were part of our group. And one of my favorite moments of the race was there was this one of the girls that was with us, and she didn't know if she could do the rope climb, and she got about halfway up, and she thought she was going to lose it. You could physically watch her decide that she was not going to fail the obstacle, and dig deep and muster up the strength and courage to keep on climbing. And she was able to climb to the top of that rope and ring that bell. And it was just such an inspirational thing to watch.
Dude, that's amazing. I love those stories. I want to go back maybe to 2015. And I hope you reflect on this a lot. And this is a huge reason of why I wanted to bring you on to talk about this, because as you look back at 2015, you see yourself, you just got injured, you're carrying some extra weight. It can be so challenging to think like, how am I going to get past this? What am I going to do? How am I going to overcome these obstacles? And what you did is you took a step, you joined a gym, and then you took another step. You worked with a trainer for a little while, and then you took a step and you worked with a nutritionist. And this was not, overnight. This is such a process. But through that process, now it's 2022. This is not your job. You're not a trainer. You're not in the health space at all. Yet you are making a massive impact in your personal life, in the lives of your family, and in the lives of all of these friends and people who are then also making an impact. Do you ever sit and reflect on that? It's pretty remarkable.
I actually don't know that I've ever sized it up from the impact from the social scale of things. I mean, I tend to be kind of intrinsically motivated, so I'll definitely look at kind of the progress I've made over the course of the journey. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, the people around you and the things that they see you doing on a daily basis, right? And the inspiration you give to others, whether you know it or not. So I know that from a personal standpoint, it's tough. These aren't always easy things to be doing. Like you said, it matters to get out there and start with that first step, right? Like, don't decide you're going to go run an ultra marathon right out of the gate. Like if you're just starting out, just decide you're go sign up for the gym. That's step one, right? And then you get that, you get to check off that box. You get that little dopamine hit of doing what you said you're going to do. And then the next one is like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym 1 day a week, whatever your metric is that you can, like an easily obtainable goal, build that momentum up. But then it's also important too, I've found that along the journey, there's always a next level to achieve. And it can be kind of daunting if you're climbing up this mountain of fitness. It's kind of the way I think about it. And you're staring up at the summit, right? And you work so hard to get to that summit, but then you get to the top there and you look and there's another summit even further up. And if you're always just looking at what the hills you have to climb are, it can be a little discouraging. So it's important to kind of turn around and look down the valley of where you've come from and appreciate the view.
That is such great advice. I absolutely love that. I want you to think back again to 2015 and compare it to where you are now. Kiddos are thriving. They look super healthy. They're out doing all of this stuff with you guys. They're crushing it. They look amazing. It looks like the type of childhood I wish I could have had a little bit more of. What does it mean to you now to feel like you are providing them with a healthy future, and contrast that to where you were before back in 2015?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that that is one of the biggest impacts that I do reflect on is my kids, because I get to see them every day and the lifestyles that they're living, and even the discussions we have about nutrition and fitness. So we got them into Spartan racing because, we were going up there and we saw it and we thought it was a good thing to do. One of the cool things about the Spartan program is they had a whole media campaign for the Spartan Kids race about how kids need to do hard things. And so we had them watch that, and they do the Spartan races, which aren't easy. I mean, you have like a 40-pound kid carrying a 20-pound sandbag. It's, if you look at the ratio there, it's definitely harder than what the grownups have to do. But so we have them watch these how kids should do hard things videos. So now when something gets hard, instead of the typical kid mode of we're like, oh, I can't do it because it's hard, right? Like now I can come back and say, hey, that's great. We're Spartans. We do hard things, right? And then just seeing the physical progression in them. We've gotten them into Taekwondo. They go running with us during the COVID shutdown. It was actually kind of interesting. That's when we were doing a lot of training for races before they started canceling them. But we just decided to carry that forward. And then the kids came home from school for that year to do remote learning. And so, not knowing there wasn't any PE class available any longer, we're like, okay, it's 7 a.m. We're going to get up and we're going to go do a family 5K together. Right. And so that's what was on our training program, and we can't leave the kids home alone. So we just kind of adapted and figured out how to make it work. So at first it was them riding their bikes with us for the 5K, and we kind of live in a hilly area. So there's some hills. So I'd have to push them up some of the hills on their bikes. And there's quite a few times where they were walking and I was carrying the bikes in each hand as I was hiking up these hills. but then it kind of kept progressing where, it's like, okay, let's see how far you can pedal up the hill. And so we leave a little rock on the trail so they could have a new metric each time to see if they could get better. And then eventually one day they're like, well, do you want to try running with us? And so then they ran a mile, and then they ran 2 miles. Now they're running like the full 3 miles. And they got to the point where they were running the 3 miles with us every day. Right. And they get on their Zoom call for school, 8 o'clock after doing this. I'm like, what'd you do this morning? Oh, we went and ran our 5K. And it kind of helps being isolated a little bit too, because they didn't have their peer group that they could like get a frame of reference that wasn't normal to run a 5K every day. They just did that because that's what mom and dad did. But it's been a real blessing and a pleasure to watch them. I mean, I just their physical prowess and ability, and just the mental way that they put things in perspective. If I ask them if they want to go work out with me, they're excited to do it. And my youngest, he loves just swinging on monkey bars and the rings we have set up for our training.
That's amazing. Yeah, dude, it's just so amazing in this world where, we can make things be so comfortable, like you talked about earlier. To try uncomfortable things and push that way, I think is amazing, and so cool that you've been able to notice that with your friends and family. I don't get super hopeful when I see how this generation is coming up, but when I see the way that you guys are doing things, making it fun, making it engaging, teaching them about movement and nutrition without making it so restrictive or forcing them, I think is absolutely wonderful. This has been such a cool conversation with so many great life lessons and learning points. And I really think your story is super inspirational. I hope there are listeners out there that take so much from this and start to pivot their lives into a more positive direction in a way that's very, very simple. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, if somebody local wanted to do, some Spartan racing with you, where can people go to find out about you and connect with you and your work?
Probably the best way to engage with us would be on the Instagram page that my wife maintains. It's the Iron Horse Athletes.
Awesome.
That's a public profile we have, and you can see on there. And she's a really amazing photographer. So there's lots of cool pictures of us just doing crazy stuff.
That's great. Awesome. We will definitely tag that in the notes. Ken Sykes, it is such an honor again to host you on our show. Your story is so inspirational, and I think it can help a lot of people. So thank you so very much for everything that you had to go through. Thank you for sharing your message here, sharing your message with your community and with your family. We just so appreciate you. So thank you so very much. And thank you for giving us some of your time today. We really appreciated it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It was an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.